Our broadcast begins with a talk about people and the power we as people have when it comes to our government, our laws, what goes on in our state. Let's use Missouri as an example, okay? More than 6 million people live here, and more than 4 million are registered voters who get a say in how everything works. And our say carries a lot of weight. In fact, it's in Article 1 of the Missouri Constitution. All political power is vested in and derived from the people, that all government of right originates from the people. We elect representatives. We can even petition the government if enough of us want something changed. The process to do that, though, to directly affect the law of the land, is already fairly difficult. First, you have to have your petition drives. You go door to door, working to reach a certain voter threshold, depending on if you want to change a law or amend the state constitution. We're talking well more than 170,000 signatures, verified signatures in most cases. And after everything's verified, the item goes to ballots across the state, and a majority vote of the people wins. Here's the thing. Right now, there's an effort in Jeff City to make this even harder.
It does not change the signatures whatsoever. What it does do is raise the threshold.
Lawmakers are considering a number of measures changing the rules for voters. One, called House Joint Resolution 43, is gaining steam. It's down in the state Senate. H.J.R. 43 calls for a public review and comment period after enough signatures are collected and raises the threshold to 60% for any of these petition pushes to pass at the polls. Supporters say it is not a drastic change and has to be approved by the voters. Critics, though, aren't missing words about the impact this could have on the power of the people.
This undermines the will of the majority, and our lawmakers shouldn't be seeking to silence Missouri voters in this way. This is a direct attack on our democracy.
This bill is one of dozens designed to change the initiative petition process in Missouri. The vast majority of these proposed bills are working to make it harder for voters to get something passed. Joining me to get to the heart of the matter is Greg Vanami, political science chair at UMKC. Thanks for coming back, Greg. This specific bill, HJR 43, only affects constitutional amendments, but what are the implications here?
So in Missouri, there are two ways to change laws. One is through the regular legislative process. The other is through the initiative process, which can be started by voters. This constitutional amendment, if approved, would make it more difficult for voters to change laws in the state of Missouri.
You know, we know that there's this notable dynamic at play in the state of Missouri and other states as well, where you have the House and the Senate are majority Republican and have been for a while, right? More conservative. But then the people, the voters, pass more progressive issues at the ballot box. You've got a Medicaid expansion, minimum wage, medical and recreational marijuana. What would a change like this, if it's passed and signed by the governor, potentially mean for, let's say, potential protections for abortions or similar measures?
So what this would change if passed is right now, in order for voters to change a law, they need to circulate petitions to get the proposal on the ballot. The question then goes before voters in a regular election, and if a majority of voters approve of the legal change, it gets added to the state constitution. This amendment, if approved, would increase that threshold to 60%. So a majority of voters wouldn't be enough. It would need to be a supermajority of voters in order to approve the law.
And to make this the law of the land, a majority of voters would have to approve it first, right?
Yes, and voters can anticipate that this will be on the ballot sometime in 2024, probably November. It could also be August, but that'll be a question for voters to decide whether or not this is a change they want made.
What's interesting here is that there are kind of two parts to this story, right? Especially on HJR 43, is that the ballot language is very interesting. We're going to put this up here. Republicans want to tack language onto this amendment to say only citizens of the United States qualify as legal voters, which is kind of moot. It's already required, right? Critics say that this misleads voters. Listen.
We all know in this room that that's misleading language and is designed to confuse people.
That's a slap in the face to the people of Missouri. It's a slap in the face. But guess what? I have faith in the people of Missouri that they're going to see through this one.
Is that a fair take? Is this a tool that lawmakers use fairly often?
So, well, what voters are going to see on the ballot for this item is they're going to see two pieces to it. So one is the this limits the voting process to U.S. citizens, and the other is increasing the threshold to 60%. So there's two pieces here. Only one of them is a moving piece. So the 60% threshold is the moving piece. The other piece is redundant. So that's already part of Missouri state law. So the state constitution and state statute already limits the voting process to only U.S. citizens. So whether this is approved or it's not approved, that part's not going to change. Some of the objection is that it makes it seem like that's an actual legal change to the process. Something's contingent on that when it's not.
Right. Has this ever been done before in Missouri or even other states?
So the initiative process varies a lot from state to state, and some it's very easy, some it's more restrictive. What we've seen recently is there have been a handful of states in 2020 and 2022 that have similarly tried to restrict the initiative process. In all 5 of those states, the ballot measures were defeated, and none of them were especially close, and a number of them lost in landslides.
No, okay, so historically, we'll see what happens there. What else catches your eye on this? Because this is not just one bill, as we said. I mean, there are nearly 40 right now. You type in the keywords initiative petition, I mean, they pop up, they light up like a Christmas tree online.
Yeah, so there's some political and institutional dynamics both. So you mentioned the partisan difference. So it's a Republican-controlled state legislature and state government, while we've seen some progressive measures pass through the initiative process. So there's a partisan dynamic there. The other is that legislatures often want more institutional control, and they sort of chafe at sharing that with other branches of government and with voters through the initiative process. But on the other hand, we see voters often push back against that. What we've seen in other states, it hasn't happened recently in Missouri, so maybe Missouri politics is different, but voters are often protective about their role in the process as well. And typically any change or any proposal that would make it more difficult for voters to change laws or to amend the Constitution is met with a degree of skepticism and opposition from voters.
All right. As an academic, I have to ask, do you feel that this is an attempt to stifle more progressive issues in Missouri?
You know, I think that's part of it. Is that the whole story? You know, I don't know that's the whole story. I think there is probably some sincere concern that you know, it's appropriate to have a higher standard for constitutional changes than statutory changes. That's not common in the states, but it's also not completely unusual. So there are some states that set higher thresholds for constitutional changes. State constitutions also have more policy content, and that sometimes draws debate whether or not constitutions are appropriate places for policy content, or really that should just be limited to the organization of government. Again, most states have that. Right. So Missouri's not unusual in the sense of having so much policy content in the state constitutions, but it's not necessarily solely a partisan food fight.
All right, well, we'll leave it there. We'll put down the food for now. Greg Bradami with UMKC. Thank you so much for your time today. We'll be closely watching these bills as they make their way through Jeff City and what this means for you. You can look for coverage here on Heart of the Matter and KMBC 9 News on air and online at KMBC.com.